We always love speaking with her. She's such an open book and great to chat to. Lisa Curry-Kenny is on with us this morning. Hi.
Good morning. And please remember to drop the Kenny.
Yeah, you know what?
Oh, no,
Lisa,
he
it
didn't.
left my mouth and now I am bright red.
He's blushing.
I am so
you never
embarrassed.
stuff up like that.
I've never
That's
done
right.
that.
It's only 17 years ago.
You know why it is? Because whenever I see you two, I think of your kids and seeing your son on TV all the time. I
know.
apologise. I'm very embarrassed by that.
It's all right. No worries. Given.
Thank you so much for chatting to us about this, because you know that I personally just think that this is a really, really worthwhile and important study. Can you explain to people what it actually is?
Yes, it's having a national call out. We need about 4,000 adult volunteers for what is one of the world's largest genetic studies on eating disorders. And so far they've identified 8 genes that predisposes someone to an eating disorder, but there are hundreds, and they need the volunteers to work out what these extra hundreds of genes are. So, it's a really important study. As you know, there's over 1 million people who are affected by it in Australia at the moment, boys and girls, males and females. It doesn't discriminate. And, of course, you all know my story. My beautiful daughter, Jamie, struggled with an eating disorder for 18 years. So she would say to me, Mum, what is wrong with me? What's going on? And I didn't have the answers for her, but I think this study is really important because family and individuals who are going through eating disorders, they deserve answers and earlier intervention and more personalised treatments, because we just don't know enough about it.
Because, Lisa, I jumped onto this research as soon as you shared it, and I was like, I'm going to be a part of it, because for many years I suffered with different forms of eating disorders. And it's interesting you hear, of Jamie going, I don't know why I'm like this. And it's always been that debate of like nature versus nurture, right? And yes, there are a lot of different environmental circumstances that, it can be affected, but are the people that are genetically dispositioned to this more affected by them? Does that make sense? Because I'm like, well, my siblings and I were brought up the same way.
Yes, exactly.
And they didn't have that. And I used to always think, well, I had a loving upbringing like your daughter did. So what is it that makes us more likely to be like that?
Well, hopefully this is what they're going to find out. But I also think it's, people who are very sensitive and quite fragile in their character. And sometimes, and I know quite a few young girls who have been spoken to by, an ex-boyfriend or someone at school, a little bit of bullying.
Yeah.
They're so sensitive that they just go, okay, I'm not going to eat anymore.
Yeah.
And there's strength in that, because I can't even go. Yeah. I can't even go one meal without eating something. I have a good appetite, but it's a personal character, and it's different in every family, and that's what makes it so hard. That you bring up your kids the same, and yet one seems to get everything.
Yeah, I found the study really confronting, and this is years in the past. But some of the questions.
Yeah.
Because it goes through a whole lot of things. It's like, have you ever been diagnosed with OCD? And I was like, oh, that's so funny, because I did as a kid. And it's like, have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD? I was like, yeah, but back before everyone had it, and it was all these aspects. But then it was also a question like, if you don't win, have you failed? And I was like, oh, geez, yeah. It was things like that. And it was going into a situation, and I would be able to, I feel like, read people's minds and emotions, and it's just, you take all that on board the same way that, you talk about your daughter, is that she's got a big heart, and then it's, they embody it in a different way than what someone else may.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you did the survey, Abby, because I remember our conversation from a couple of years ago. And I just want to reinforce to people who might have an eating disorder right now, or know someone that does it, when they fill in the survey, they're very safe.
Yeah. Yes,
no judgment. But the most important thing is to be honest. And, someone who has an eating disorder right now, they may not be in the right mindset to fill it in properly, so they might need someone to help them out. But I really urge everybody, because it's a shit place to be in when you're watching your child dissolve in front of you. So as many people as we can to try and fill in the survey. I know we're about halfway so far. There's about 1,850 surveys that have been done. We need 4,000, so we just need to keep spreading the word.
Mm-hmm.
And then you qualify, and then they're going to send you a
vial to spit in.
to spit in, like for a DNA testing and stuff.
So if it's genetic, then couldn't that lead into the ways of medication for it?
Well, I guess, but I mean, you want to try and find out why these things are happening, and prevention is always better than cure. Of course. You can start early, because I had a message from a lady whose son has the eating disorder, which is called ARFID, which is the avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, where he only has eaten 4 different types of food for like 12 years.
Yeah.
So, it's really difficult. It's just unraveling the human body. These scientists are amazing in what they can do and find out. So, hopefully in the future we'll know a lot more about it.
I don't think it's as much as the medication, but it's kind of like finding out whether you've got the gene in your family for breast cancer more likely to have it, or whether you've got the Alzheimer's gene. So are you able to do different measures along the way to be able to avoid that? Because you're never going to go on a restrictive diet ever if you are prone to have it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or be exposed to different ways.
I feel like that'd be a huge relief for the person, like mentally.
And just a huge advantage to go, okay, cool, well, this is more likely maybe in your family, so maybe let's address it now.
What I found interesting in the survey too was just other family members and what do they have, like bipolar or schizophrenia or depression, anxiety. It covers everything, which is really good to it's really good to know that they're really what I call is unraveling the onion, because it's just not what you're going through today. It's what you've been through, maybe the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, your whole life.
Lisa, Hugh from the Resilience Project, his book talks about his sister who had an eating disorder and, how he kind of grew up, having that in his family. With Jamie, was one of the hardest parts that she wanted to get better but just didn't know how?
Well, I think, and Abby, you might be able to add on to this, but I think it gets you slowly.
Right.
Like, you start off, you might not, someone says something to you at school, you don't like it, you don't start not eating, and then, you start feeling hungry, but you get a headache, and then, you start getting snappy at your family, and then you don't eat again. But it's sort of this really gradual snowballing effect that it has on your body, and it affects your cognitive side of you as well. So you start not thinking properly, you're snappy, things are going wrong. And then, after a while, and I don't know, maybe months or years, it's so ingrained in you that you can't get out of it. And this was like, we called it like a demon that was in Jamie's body. And she couldn't get out of it. And of course, a lot of eating disorders end up being different addictions as well, whether it's alcohol or drugs or they call it volume up, volume down. So you can become like a hermit or you can become really promiscuous. So, there's lots of things that go with it. So it starts off, probably where your parent goes, come on, just eat your dinner. What's going on? But then, a year later, it's turned into something that they can't find their way out of. But
it's like a strange block. It's the weirdest block. And it's like, for people that don't, it's like, I don't understand why you can't just get over it. I can't just eat. And it's like for years you go through it like privately. So I always think as soon as someone's found out, it's gone on for way longer than that. And you always think, I can stop this. I can stop it. Like I am going to stop it. And I used to think that for years and years. And then I got to a point where I was like, geez, I can't. And by that point, it's that admitting, and it's that whole block in every single aspect. And it's that obsession with consumption and non-consumption and punishing yourself and rewarding yourself. And at the same time, it's functioning for a while until it's completely and utterly not.
He says that in the book. He would think to himself, if you just ate, it would fix all the problems in our family. Why won't you just eat? But he didn't understand what she was going through.
You're an alcoholic. You go to AA. You don't drink again. You have a relationship with food where you still need to have it
That's a
to
good
be
point.
able to survive.
Yeah, right.
And you have all these rules that you put on yourself as well. So it's a real hard thing to sort of go, okay, well, the one thing that is causing my problems is also something that I can't go without.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one moment where Jamie, I won't mention the place, but she was in an eating disorder rehab unit, and one of their I don't know if it was an exercise or a test or something, but they bought these beautiful muffins that were covered in cream, and they had to eat it, and it really tormented Jamie because what they were trying to say was it's okay to eat this muffin, you know, okay, it's not going to make or break anything. But to someone who has an eating disorder, that was just like this huge, you know, red flag sitting in front of them, and they couldn't get up until they'd eaten it. And then, of course, you know probably what happens after that. So, you know, Abby, I'm really proud of you for being so vocal about this, because as you know, some people get through it, some people live with it, and some people don't get through it. And I think by talking about it more, it takes away the stigma and the shame, and knowing that there's so many people around who will not enjoy, but who will get a lot out of what you have to say, you know, because you've lived through it. But then listening to me and knowing, you know, on the other side, how devastated we are, you know, when our daughter didn't get through it, because that can sometimes be the end result.
I think you're both incredibly strong to be able to share your story, to be honest.
Sorry, I can't talk at the moment.
Someone's,
Sorry, hon. Yeah.
No, it's you know, it's therapeutic. It's like so in the past for me, but at the same time, I do just go, oh God, I hope that no one has to go through it. And at the moment, my best friend's daughter is, and you just go, gosh, really? You know, and she grew up with me throughout that whole time, and she's like, I thought I knew, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, she's lucky she has you in a tough way to be able to help her through that.
Yeah, and you know, I think this is why it's so important for people to do this survey, because they can know that they're part of the solution for years to come, and for kids that are going to grow up, you know, with an eating disorder of some sort.
Yeah. Well, we'll get all the details up on our socials so people can get involved with it as well. And remember, there's always.
I just want to say thank you to you guys and to everyone else too. And I want to say that, you know, Jamie often said to me, Mum, when I get better, I want to help people get through this. And I know she'd be really happy that this is happening.
Yeah.
Because when it was presented to me, I just thought, oh, wow, there's light at the end of the tunnel for this. And I absolutely know 100% that Jamie would be looking down saying thank you to everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Lisa, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on with us this morning.
Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day.
You too. And you can always, too, if you need help, support is available from the Butterfly National Helpline, 1-800-33-4673.